everyone, welcome back to the Bare Threads. This is actually a book review, kind of. My most recent book that I've read is The White Book. The White Book by Han Kang. That's a great start. So this was translated into English by Deborah Smith. Han Kang is a Korean author. So this book was published in a year that was 2017 in English, 2016 in Korean, and it's one that I had on my list for quite a while, along with Greek Lessons, which is another of Han Kang's books, basically because I read The Vegetarian, thought it was great, and this one also translated by the same translator, Deborah Smith. This one was first published in English in 2015, but actually I think was published in Korean in 2007. So there's a bit of a longer gap between the English translation, but I really liked it. And so then after that I got another of her books, Human Acts, same translator again, and this one published in 2016 in English and in Korean in 2014. So the gaps between the English and the Korean publications are getting shorter as she obviously has built up more of a following, and perhaps it also is related to the publisher's rights of where they can publish the books, like what parts of the world and stuff. I don't quite understand it all. But I really liked these two books. They're quite different in terms of the content, the plot, and they're both a little bit odd. I don't know if that's like a good description. It sounds quite damning with faint praise, or like actively critical, but The Vegetarian was in my top 5 weird books that I like, or top 5 weird books mostly that I liked, and this one I really did like. So I do think they are a bit weird, but I did really like them. So I wanted to read another one of her books for a while, and also they're quite short actually, so that's always appealing. So I went with The White Book, which it was described, or I saw it described, as a list of white things. And I was just thinking, like, I don't understand how that's a book, or why everyone seems to think it's really amazing, because it's had great reviews, and it also was shortlisted apparently for the Man Booker International Prize in 2018. So it's done really well, I think. I didn't really understand what it was. So I got it. And it is essentially like a list of white things, but each thing, like newborn gown, white city, frost, ashes, Milky Way, what else is there, white bone, sand, incandescent bulb, silence, shroud, raw rice, raw and cooked. Some of these things are kind of obviously white. Some of these things, like silence, and there's also white laughing, are a little bit more open to interpretation. And also obviously there is the translation from Korean to English, which does affect that. So in the passage on white laughing, or I don't know how is it, white laughing or laughing whitely, she does actually say that it probably doesn't translate out of her native language. So yeah, some of these things are like clearly white, and other things a little bit more open to interpretation and perhaps cultural. Most of the things though are like, you can understand how they are white, because quite a lot of them are related to snow and ice and frost and things like that, which makes sense. But yeah, each thing that is white has a title of what it is, so in this case sleet, and then just a little passage about that thing. There's sort of a narrative that runs through it, but I don't know whether that's just because I really want there to be a narrative, that I'm really trying to tie all the passages together. If they don't tie together, then I don't fully understand how it works as a book. If they do tie together, then there wasn't really enough for me to get it and connect with it and like follow it through. she mentions a few times, so a few of the passages are relating to the death of her sister, who was her parents' first child, who died a few hours after she was born. And that's obviously quite sad and emotive passage, and those references, and that is sort of woven through, I think, the whole book. And she just sort of think about what it would be like now if her sister had survived and what she would be like. But then also she reflects at one point that if her parents' first two children had survived, then they wouldn't have gone on to have the next two children, which is her and her sibling. So she would have never actually been born, because her parents would just have stopped trying to conceive another child, which is a really interesting and weird thought, and a little bit unsettling, I would imagine. And that was quite interesting. And so the bits that's clearly referred to the death of this child, and then imagining her being an adult now, and then the fact that she would not be alive though if that were the case, that's quite interesting, and that kind of runs throughout the book. And there seems to be a sort of imagined character who is encountering these things. Initially, the first section is in first person, so I was told that she was a girl. This is about her sister. And then, last spring, someone asked me whether I'd had a particular experience when you were young which brought you close to sadness. Or when I go out into the streets, the scraps of conversation which pull into focus when the speaker brushes past me, the words stamped on street and shop signs are all almost incomprehensible. So it's in that first person. And then the second section, which is a lot longer, is called She. That is the title of the second section. And then that is in third person. She'd once seen the sea itself frozen over. The day she was born was one of frost rather than snow. It was on the outskirts of this city that she saw the butterfly. And so part of that is perhaps I kind of kept thinking that it was about her sister, but actually one of those sections at the beginning of She is rime, R-I-M-E, which is not a word I'd heard before, but it seems to be the frost that's forming on the glass in a window. And so it's then about a writer who saw such a window, and then that's why he decided to name his first daughter Seol Young. Sorry if I'm not saying that right, but meaning snowflower. And then the rest of the section is all in that third person, so it's almost about it's about Seol Young, or from her perspective anyway. But then it's like things that Han Kang wouldn't know, so it's just imagined. So she remembers one of her bosses, a middle-aged man who used to say how he longed to see a former lover again in old age. That's not something that Han Kang, writing this, would know about Seol Young. So it's imagined. So then who is the she? So I don't know, that kind of, I don't want to say it would confuse me, I was fine with not knowing, but that is kind of what runs through that second bit, is that it's this kind of sort of imagined woman who's experiencing these things. And I don't know, there's something about it that I felt like I was reading through these passages, because the book is not very long, and some of these passages are not even half a page. So I whizzed through it really quickly, but I don't think that was a good thing, because I probably should have taken more time over it to try and understand it more. But I felt like I was sort of more box ticking. I just wanted to get through the sections, get through the passages to finish the book. So I don't know, it just didn't quite work for me. I guess I just need more of a narrative structure to put, more of a narrative to pull me through. I don't mind being a little bit confused by the narrative, but I kind of need there to be something. So the other two Han Kang books I thought I would just ramble on about a little bit more. I mentioned them briefly, The Vegetarian and Human Acts. So The Vegetarian is about women's position in contemporary Korean society, forms of rebellion and transgression and taboo, also mental health, physical health, violence. It's not, again, it's not long, but she packs it all in there. So a young woman decides that she wants to become a vegetarian. Her husband is horrified at this. I guess this is just a very unusual thing to be in Korean society. She goes to a family dinner. Her husband is very like embarrassed that he can't control her. Her father tries to force her to eat meat, and when she refuses, he slaps her. And you kind of think that's what the book's going to be about, but then it kind of turns and her mental health declines and she starts to imagine that she is a plant. So she doesn't want to eat any food, she just wants to get like her energy from sunlight. Her brother-in-law then becomes fixated by her in a kind of sexual way. He's an artist and he wants to use her in his art, and he imagines himself having sex with her, but then he decides that he isn't attractive enough because he wants to film it as part of his art. So he wants to get another artist to have sex with her, but they're both painted to look like flowers, but they don't know that they're supposed to be having sex, so it's not consensual. And then it just keeps going, and I don't know, I really liked it, but it is quite odd. So then it went on to Human Acts, which is quite different, and this one is just like a lot more sad. It is about a real historical event. So there was a student uprising in 1980 that actually happened, and a lot of the students were killed. And so in the book, there's a young boy who was a student who was part of that kind of uprising. I don't know the ins and outs of what was actually happening politically. I think I did look it up at the time when I read this, but now I've kind of forgotten. But anyway, he gets involved and he actually gets killed. And so in the next passage, the next chapter is actually his ghost. And so we go into a bit of a supernatural direction, but in a way that's just quite sad rather than fantastical. And then each of the other chapters is looking at it from a different character's perspective. So there's one that's quite a few years into the future, which I think is from his mother's perspective, and like her son just didn't come home because all the children and students that died, their bodies were just kind of dumped somewhere kind of thing. So I don't think they ever found out, the family never got that kind of like a closure, that they never properly found out what happened to him. So she still waits for him to come home even after like decades later. And so there's just so much in it that's just like really sad. And in that regard, it's quite different from The Vegetarian. I would say you got a bit of that in the White Book when she's talking about her sister, her baby sister, well actually her older sister, but who died as a baby. Kind of in some ways I felt like echoed some of the sentiment of Human Acts, but I still would prefer Human Acts because even though it moves from different characters' perspectives, it moves through time, like over several decades actually, and even though, like I said, it has that supernatural element of one of the chapters being from the perspective of the boy's ghost, it has this like narrative that works, and it pulled me in a lot more, and I don't know, it just worked for me. Anyway, that is my rambly book review. Let me know what you think in the comments and give us a like and a subscribe. Let me know if you've read any of Han Kang's books and which ones you preferred. Let me know what you thought of the White Book and if that was one that you actually really rated. And what is Greek Lessons like by Han Kang? Has anyone read that? And I will see you next time.